It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy and Renee are here. We're going to talk about Logic Pro 10. Just came out right before the show. We also have some rumors about Apple buying the company that makes Kinect for Microsoft. It's all next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 359, recorded July 16th, 2013. Hamburger, buttons, and basements. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by LegalZoom.com. LegalZoom is not a law firm. They provide self-help services at your direction, like affordable business and personal documents you can trust. Visit LegalZoom.com and use the offer code MBW to get $10 off at checkout. And by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/MacBreak. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, or online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, visit squarespace.com and use the offer code MacBreak7. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show that covers all your Apple needs. Not just the Macintosh, oh no. iOS 7, the App Store, the watch, the TV, all of the imaginary Apple products. Here he is, Mr. Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, our expert in the U.S., south of the 49th parallel, then up north of the 49th parallel from imore.com and Montreal's very own Renee Ritchie.
Hi, Leo. How are you?
Good to see you both. It's just the three of us today. I thought Alex was going to have like all this bandwidth somewhere.
He's in Mexico City at the moment.
And he said he had a lot of bandwidth where he was going.
I'm sure he does, but he also has a gig.
He's a working.
Yeah.
He's a working man.
Yeah.
How fun. Man, there's this. It's just fun to watch him. It's like, where's Waldo? Apparently, the local merchants in Petaluma are doing a promotion to get you to shop local, where if you spot Waldo in the store, you get some deal. And one of our interns has been co-opted as a Waldo, was wandering around the studio in red striped T-shirt and a cap.
Now, see, usually the thrust of the Where's Waldo puzzle is that there are 1,000 people in the puzzle, one of which is Waldo.
This is the opposite.
If you're at a diner with a capacity of 10 people, I'm sure it's kind of not. You don't need a person-to-person. You don't need to have like a CHP roadblock.
The words sore thumb leap to mind. So Apple, you little devil dog, you. They released a new version of Logic Pro 10 with virtual drummer flex pitch, a free iPad component, and it's $199. It's in the App Store and there's no upgrade.
If you had the original.
Right. Which I did, and I bought it in the App Store. Henry, so this is a little frustrating because Henry uses this like crazy. He loves making his, I don't know, he calls them his dubs. I don't know what the hell he's doing. But we bought the packaged version first, and I actually bought Logic Express first, then I bought the full Logic Pro package edition. And then about a year ago, I saw it was on the App Store. I said, oh, good. I'll buy it on the App Store. That way it'll always be up to date.
It was until this morning, Leo.
Yeah.
I bought it 2 weeks ago in the Mac app.
No, you did not.
Yes, I did. $199 2 weeks ago.
And there's no upgrade route for you?
I was on this show. Jason Snell convinced me that it was a fantastic piece of software. So I bought. I mean, I could go to the iTunes receipt and hit report a problem and ask for a cheesy refund. But this is the same thing that happened with Tweety. Tweety 2 was a new app. Versions of Twitterrific have been the same app. There's no upgrade pricing in any of Apple's stores, and everyone was waiting to see what Apple would do when one of their major pro apps, got a new version. And iWork was never updated. Yeah, because maybe they would do it for free. And, some people didn't like that idea because it would devalue software further. But they're not only not doing a sale to give everyone an upgrade price, they're just putting it out at $199 again. So a new app is the new upgrade.
So it's probably worth one. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff. It seems like there should be a middle ground. I understand Apple doesn't want to give this away, but it seems like there should be a middle ground where you could offer an upgrade to existing users. Why is that impossible in the App Store? I don't understand. We have computers now. Surely they could figure this out.
Well, it might be difficult to do with the standard checkout process, but you're right. It'd be nice if everybody who complained about it said had the ability to simply get a credit, not necessarily a refund to their credit card, but fine, here is X dollars refunded to your iTunes account. They've done that before. For instance, when they reduced the price of the iPhone, they wouldn't refund the money that you spent too much of when they reduced the price, but they said, well, we'll give you a gift card so you can spend some of that money at the back of the Apple Store. I mean, there's not much you can do about it. At some point, you have to decide that this thing is important enough to you that you need to own it right now. But when you talk, you're right. When you talk about this is an Apple product sold in an Apple store, it seems as though there are solutions at hand that Apple could do if they wanted to, but perhaps they just don't think people are raise a big enough to think about it.
They will, but it is. I mean, and not that it's not a good deal at $200, but Renee's a perfect example. If somebody bought it in the last 6 months, it's crazy to have to pay a full price for an upgrade.
The full price is crazy. I mean, Apple's had language in the App Store to talk about upgrades since iOS 3, I think. People get little pop-ups saying you qualify for upgrade pricing, and every time they'd write and send it to us and say, look, Apple's playing with upgrades. But it looks like their policy is that low-priced software replaces upgrades. The original Logic Pro in the box was, I think, $500.
Right.
And $200 is an upgrade price for $500. But
True.
Apple is saying everything is low price now. There's no more upgrades, but it's like those stores, right? Everyday low prices for software for everyone.
Yeah, and you know how well that worked for JCPenney.
All right,
Zing.
so I'm going to stop bitching. I think it's pretty clear Apple needs to add some sort of, if not for itself, for every developer who sells in the App Store, there needs to be some upgrade path so that they don't have to either create a whole new version, quote, and charge a full price for it, it just seems like there needs to be a way to upgrade at a lower cost. But
and
go ahead.
What some developers do is they make a sale price. So if the new app is $5, they give it to everyone for $2. But then people who just bought it complain, saying, "Well, that guy didn't buy it. Why is he getting the same low price as me?
Right.
You're not favoring me, your loyal customer." So it's
having said all that, it is a very good product for $200. If you work in audio or music or whatever. I mean, Logic has always been a great program. Not as heavily used, perhaps, as Pro Tools, but and there are other good competitors to this, but none of them are anywhere near this price. So, that it's a good price, and you're getting a lot of stuff. Plus, there's this Main Stage 3 is updated for $30, which gives you kind of a performance interface, which is pretty darn cool. And then there's a free component for the iPad. So all in all, I mean, I think it's a great solution for musicians. I'm not knocking it in that respect. It's clear they need to have some sort of upgrade path.
I tried the original Logic Pro when I bought it 2 weeks ago because I wanted to switch from GarageBand to Logic Pro for editing, and it looked old. The interface didn't look updated. It looked really complicated. Jason Snell spent a lot of time explaining to me what he did, which was very kind of him, but just approaching it was intimidating and off-putting to me because I have no audio skills. And what I'm hoping is that Logic Pro X, or Logic Pro 10, will do for audio what Final Cut Pro 10 did. A couple weeks ago, I explained how I have no experience. I could do a 3-camera edit in Final Cut Pro 10 in like an hour, which was incredibly empowering for me. And my hope is when I get time to play with this, it'll do the same sort of thing.
My hope, too. It looks pretty similar, but, who I have to ask is my son, because he really uses it a lot. When I fortunately now have a team that does all the editing for me. But I used to use Audition, which was an Adobe product, and Audition 3 is a pretty nice product because it was simpler. It was really based on cutting, on editing. This is really more based on layering instruments, using loops, that kind of thing. And it does have absolutely very capable recording capabilities as well.
Both Jim Dalrymple and Chris Breen have posted reviews. They had advanced copies and they had reviews up this morning, and they both sounded very optimistic about it.
We tried to get Chris on. He was busy. 1,500 instrument and effect patches, 800 sampled instruments, 30 urban and electronic drum machine patches, plus 3,600 Apple loops for $200, and all of the other, the software, the drum production, the bass and guitar. I'll be very curious. It has, it has autosave, which is nice. Good on Apple for updating it. Actually, I'm very pleased that they're keeping it up to date. There's been some question about how much they care about pro users. Well, there you go. I bought it and I'm downloading it. And
yeah, but the important difference is that it's not so much that they care about pro users. What they care about is all the people that they gave GarageBand to a number of years ago can now through this nicer interface and the lower price feel empowered to say, I'm going to jump from GarageBand to this professional tool. I really think that they're looking for more users like Renee, who as opposed to users who like grew up are professional editors, because this is another thing that keeps people wondering, well, why would I ever not have a Macintosh, given that I've used these things for 10 years and it's always been able to grow with me.
Yeah. Well, my son's a perfect example because he started with GarageBand and outgrew its capabilities. So I said, well, you already know GarageBand. I think Logic is a logical next step. Actually, I went to Logic Express, as I mentioned. Bought a few copies for his school, too. They have a recording studio now, and they've moved to Logic, too.
And the interface, not flat.
Is it skeuomorphic?
It's the last bastion of rich design on...
I like it.
Mac is now the last bastion of rich design, yeah.
I don't mind it. I really don't. I think it looks good. When you're doing music, Propeller Heads does this with reason. They make it look like the analog things just because people know how to use these things. And so it's kind of helps you with the learning curve. Other programs I've seen that don't do that are I think a little more intimidating at least.
Yeah, great job by the Pro Apps team.
I love it. I mean, the look. I'm downloading it, as I said, I'm downloading it right now. As soon as it's installed, I'll
and the interface is dark now, and as all developers know, when you make a good dark interface, you can charge double for your app.
Here's some bad news. Ransomware has hit OS X. This has been a massive problem on the Windows side. Not a weekend goes by that somebody doesn't call my radio show saying, I have a notice on my computer that says the FBI has discovered I'm doing something illegal, pirating music or child pornography, but they said I can get off for $300 if I send them a money pack. I have to go down to the 7-Eleven and get a money pack. Does that sound right to you? Actually, it doesn't. Obviously, anybody who reads that's not going to do that. But
our post 9/11 world, FBI has to take over all the 7-Elevens, the convenience stores. Everybody's under surveillance. Why do you think the Twinkies went off the market? So they could put more recording devices in them before they put them back on the market.
Notice they're back and they're sweetened. So if you suddenly get this page on your system that says your browser has been blocked for illegal use, please send us $300. Obviously, don't.
Is it real malware, Leo, or just a social engineering attack?
It's just a web page, ironically. So it does load 150 iframes that you have to dismiss one after another. And so it's not real. So that's one thing that's really different. And it shows you that it isn't as easy to hijack a Mac, I believe, as it is to hijack Windows. On Windows, it really does lock it. And you can't do anything. You can get rid of it, but you have to know what you're doing. On the Mac, it's just 150 iframes that you have to close. And they're figuring, well, people are just going to give up and pay the ransom. Of course, all you have to do is force close Safari and you're fine.
Yeah, and restart without Windows. Repopping.
Yeah. So there's a video. This is Mac Rumors has a video that shows this whole process and what to do. Reset Safari, or just some, as everybody in the chat room was saying, hold down the Shift key when you launch Safari. That prevents it from reopening the previous window and tab, and now you're done. And don't go back to that place. Should I do it? I wonder if I could find a link.
That completely legitimate website you're going to that doesn't have anything that's naughty or illegal.
Oh, God, they're going to sue Apple over this.
I want to know what site, because I'd like to go. There's the pop-up. See that? 150 times. Oh, it's not an iframe. Or is it an iframe?
It's like a modal pop-up.
Yeah, it looks like a modal pop-up. You can do that in JavaScript. Not a big deal. This is really pretty much depending on the stupidity of the people who get bit by this, because I think everybody who watches this show would know enough to quit Safari Hold the
let's say
shift key down and
ignorance
restart.
rather than stupidity.
Yes, bad word, stupidity. Ignorance. Or just, and this, as you say, it is social engineering because it plays upon your fear. Mm-hmm. And people go, oh, my God, what did I do? Is it my kid? What happened? Mm-hmm. Somebody did something. Malwarebytes says reset Safari. That is not necessary. I don't recommend that because you're going to have to go back and, you're going to lose all your stuff. So just hold the shift key down when you restart Safari. It's easy. And welcome to the wacky world of the internet.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare the science fiction of the 50s and 60s and 70s about the utopia that really was very, very possible given all the technology we have today, given the technologies that Arthur C. Clarke and the rest of them were predicting. But they didn't factor in, realize that human beings, they're kind of jerks. Yeah. there will be people who will figure out a way to basically jerk up the most perfect situation ever. So
this is why we can't have a nice internet.
You're right, Andy. There was this kind of, when you read, there's dystopian and utopian fiction, and you kind of hope it's going to go to the utopian side. But I don't think we've fully gone to dystopia yet. But it does. It feels like it's a slip. It feels like we're starting to slide down the slope. So, folks,
not yet. But you do agree that it's like. Why is it that there's so many steps involved to go pick up my mail? Well, because they used to be really, really easy, but then someone decided, hey, I bet I could figure out a way to get everybody's mail if I simply did this. And now that's why you can't buy stamps without having ID and have all this sort of stuff. It's like there's a you should Google, I think it's probably not on YouTube, I think it's on NBC.com, a Saturday Night Live sketch where it was a talk show where all the guests were people who had ruined things for everybody. And like that Jim Belushi is, hitchhiking. Oh yes, that was the time when anybody, if you needed a ride, you could simply stand by the side of the road and stick out your thumb and someone would pick you up. Well, why don't we do this anymore? Well, I was hitchhiking and this nice fellow picked me up, and then I don't know why, but it just occurred to me, he doesn't know me, I don't know him, there's no connection. I could just kill him and take his car, and it worked. So I kept doing it over, and before long, people stopped picking people up, and I'm the guy.
These things happen. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So the other thing, just to go back, I'm downloading Logic Pro now. And after you install it, which it is done now, you download the loops and all of that stuff. And there's 2 gigabytes of stuff to continue to download. But while downloading, you can choose, I'm new to Logic Pro, or I've used Logic Pro before, and you can see stuff. I have to say, even though there should be an upgrade path for the App Store, $200 for what you get is pretty remarkable. I mean, think about this. This is turning your Mac into a music studio.
I think that the next time we meet each other next week, you'll be in the gold motorcycle helmet, Renee will be in the pro motorcycle helmet. The ability to just simply for the amount of money you would have spent for a basic tool, you essentially get every single tool. Yeah. You can be disappointed that they did the upgrade the way they did, but oh man, what a lot of value.
Right, and as iTrooper saying in the chat room, there is an actual cost to Apple for 2 gigabytes worth of downloads, let alone the R&D and all of that stuff. Yeah. I think $200, given what you get, that would be an upgrade price for a lot of tools, frankly, or even less than an upgrade price for a lot of tools.
And the iPad Companion app looks pretty good too. You can just control it from a distance.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back, because Apple, according to some, is considering buying something that Microsoft may not be too happy about. We'll talk about that in just a second, but first a word from LegalZoom.com. It's not going to help you with ransomware. That's not what LegalZoom is. It's not a law firm. LegalZoom is legal, lets you create legal documents you can trust easily and quickly at a far lower price than you'd pay if you went to a lawyer who would do exactly the same thing. The LLC that runs this company created exactly this way, step by step, online, checking boxes. That was in 2005. It's the same LLC, even as we've grown. And that's only $99 plus the state filing fee. Incorporation, S Corp or C Corp, same thing. How about trademark? Do you have a blog or a brand that you want to protect? If you're just starting out as a blogger and you've got a pretty clever name for your title, it might be worth protecting it. It's only $169. We trademarked Twit and the Twit logo. and now when it comes to the home, there's certainly legal documents you must have, like a last will. If you don't have a will, the government decides what happens to your assets and to what happens to your kids. $69. Now, one thing they've added since I used LegalZoom back in 2005, by the way, I wasn't a pioneer by any means. LegalZoom has been around for quite some time, doing a great job for hundreds of thousands of folks. One thing they've got now is they've got a legal plan, which means you can actually ask an attorney. But it's not open-ended. It's a fixed, flat rate, which is great. They have attorneys in almost every state. All of them have profiles online, plus unedited customer reviews. So you can get some good advice. LegalZoom.com. In the past 12 years, over 2 million Americans have used LegalZoom for LLCs, wills, trusts, trademarks, and more. You should, too. If you're starting a company, do it right. LegalZoom.com. As a little thank you, if you use the offer code MBW for MacBreak Weekly, when you check out, we'll take $10 off. That means that will's only $59. LegalZoom.com. Use the offer code MacBreak Weekly, and we thank you and we thank them for your support of MacBreak Weekly. It's just a rumor right now. I don't think Apple's saying anything about it, but I think it would be kind of interesting if Apple ends up buying the Israeli company that designed Kinect. Now, they're still independent of Microsoft. Microsoft Kinect, of course, a very hot item for the Xbox 360 and will be built into the Xbox One. There is a rumor going around, although it's now denied by PrimeSense, that they are in acquisition talks somewhere in the $280 to $300 million range. PrimeSense says it's not so. A delegation of PrimeSense senior executives did visit Apple recently. What do you guys think? Is this... I mean, obviously, any license agreement they had with Microsoft would continue.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine, given that they've had such success with this client to begin with, that they would try to sour that. Right. Also, has there been any indication that Apple has any interest in this technology at all?
That's the interesting question, isn't it? Do you think they want gesture?
No, because I think this is the same reason why they don't want keyboards that are smaller than a standard size keyboard. I think that in the air gestures for now is the equivalent of the way that Apple thinks of netbooks. Good idea, good thinking, but absolutely the wrong solution to that problem. I think that they do want to find a way to let people control a TV-enabled device without necessarily having to have a keyboard in their lap. But I don't think that they want to teach people, how to do the butterfly call and other yoga techniques or whatever, just to change channels on a TV set.
Intel, according to TechCrunch, just acquired another Israeli company doing gesture-based interfaces, Omek Interactive. So Intel wants them. Microsoft's got a license to PrimeSense. PrimeSense, by the way, didn't just deny it. They actually said the report was BS.
But you'd figure if they wanted to sell, they could have sold. I'm sure Microsoft wants to own any core technology that's as important to any product. Kinect is a hugely important product to them, and them owning it, not owning it, must be very annoying. So if they were going to sell, you'd think Microsoft would be in there with an offer very quickly.
Yeah. It's a great story about how Microsoft acquired Kinect. It was a demo on an airplane that was it's a fascinating story, but Kinect itself in the Xbox 360 iteration is not very impressive. It's low resolution. You have to be far back. So reportedly, the new Xbox One has a much better version of Kinect with a lot more data points and so forth. Clearly, the future is in this arena somehow. So you think, Andy, that Apple has no interest at all in any kind of Minority Report gesture-based thing?
I don't think they have no interest at all. I certainly don't think they have enough interest to buy a company that has that technology. I think that if and when they were to actually use that, then they would want to own it, just like for the reasons that Renee says. But for now, the answer you need to provide is, what product would they put this in, and how would this be better than any other solution that Apple would have? I think that I could really see. Sometimes when I'm evaluating a rumor like that, I imagine the keynote script, and I imagine Tim Cook talking about, and there's other people have been doing interesting things with in-the-air gestures, but it's laborsome. We found in our studies. Besides, why would we? I'm looking for a key prop that I don't. Oh, there it is. It's like, and so Plus, why would anybody want to try to memorize these weird gestures when they have the best remote they could possibly have? The iPad Mini.
Oh, yeah, good point.
They would be saying that you have your iPad with you, you have your iPhone with you. We're creating a brand new infrastructure so that these two work with each other in a way that no two devices ever worked before, and it far exceeds. We think you'll agree. And then they'll also put in a remark about how, and you don't have to worry about that unblinking eye on your TV set looking at you when you don't know that it's looking at you, and it's. Which is actually, I mean, which is funny, but it's another issue. There's so many people that it's falling into the Google Glass effect, where the fact that there is a lens and someone does not necessarily know when this lens is looking and when this lens is not looking, there is a serious creep factor to that. And so I think that especially a company like Apple that focuses so heavily on how humans interact with computers, that would be a very, very big thing for them to have to solve before they put that to market.
Yeah, that is one thing people complained about when the Xbox One was announced. You mean that camera's always watching?
Yeah, and also the fact that it's always on and that it's always listening for a voice command to turn itself on. You would do there. I mean, Microsoft has to do a lot of education to say, well, we're not going to burn up 200 watts of power to keep a CPU completely active to listen for complete voice command. We actually have a much lower power system that's doing nothing but listening for this one key phrase. So they're not really recording everything. But that's
NSA subsidies, Andy.
The NSA likes it.
Well, you don't think the
timing is bad. If Prism hadn't come out, people would not be so nervous about this stuff. But the timing is not good.
They were nervous enough. They were nervous before that. I mean, again, look at the track for Glass over the past couple of years. Nobody. I do find that when I'm sure that some people there at the Brick House have the same sort of reaction. When people try it on, they feel a lot better about it. When they get to ask those questions that, are you recording me now? And you have to say no, because if I kept this recording things all the time, the battery would die in about 15 minutes, and you would also see something happening. I would have to, blah blah blah. The humans are not quite ready to simply trust a lens in their house quite yet. Even I mean, like so many people, the chat camera on my notebook, all of them always have a piece of tape over the lens, not because
really. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, because I mean, not that I necessarily fear some malicious person getting into my computer and activating it, but because there are times when you activate the web browser and they didn't tell you that they're doing WebEx and the camera comes on and you don't know if anybody's seeing you. Yeah. But it's not like I'm naked inside my office or anything. But it's like I would like to at least smooth down my eyebrows, maybe fluff out my sideburns. You like to have that level of control, and the only thing that makes you absolutely damn sure that lens is not seeing something is when you have something obscuring it.
To Andy's point, it reminds me of Craig Federighi when he went around to WWDC and said, with AirDrop, you don't have to go and bump your phone. And it was similar when they did Passbook, because people kept asking about NFC. And there might be a world where Apple wants gestures, but in general, they haven't done abstract gestures. You've never had to make cast a spell on your device to get something to happen. It's always been direct manipulation. You touch something and you physically move it across the screen, whether it's a panel or anything else. And that's not as obvious when there's no physical contact, when there's no Fitz law involved. You're not grabbing anything real. And maybe I'm sure they must have gesture stuff in the lab and be playing around with it. But before they did multi-touch on the iPhone, they bought Fingerworks, and they got access to all of Fingerworks' technology. And if they do gestures, you'll probably see them by somebody before they announce any products.
That's an interesting observation, though. One of the nice things about NFC is that it has this beautifully elegant human interface and a level of control that the humans like to have. That if I want to will somebody that I want someone to have this picture that I have on my phone, I know that all I have to do is go like this, touch, and that absolutely explicit gesture is what moves the picture from one to another, as opposed to, no, just turn this feature on. Don't worry. I know that technically this is a feature that lets wirelessly data to come off of your phone and move on another device, but we totally promise you that will never happen unless you explicitly make that happen. There's something very reassuring about this being, nope, that did not see, no data left my phone because I was not within a half an inch of your device. So people get over it, but these are subtle things, and it's going to take a number of years before we get that level of comfort.
I think we're already seeing, too, the obscurity of gesture-based interfaces. We're seeing more and more gesture-based interfaces. Windows 8 is a good example, and so much of it was just kind of, It's undiscoverable, and so
BlackBerry 10 is hugely gesture based.
and it's. Do you find it intuitive? I don't find it intuitive.
I think that there are two different kinds of ease of use. There's the kind that help you learn something in the first 30 seconds, and then there's the sort of thing that makes something easier to use starting 1 week after you first try it and then going for the life of the device. Let's use things like examples like the 3 and 4 finger gestures on the iPad, where it was a long time before I got in the habit of expose the application dock, 4 fingers slide up, go back to home by all 5 fingers pinch in. That's completely non-intuitive. It's not something you would simply discover on your own. I think there was months and months before I even used it, but once that programming kind of hit my brain, now it's almost as if I rarely use the home key anymore, because sliding upward is just the place where I can find it. Well, it's like Renee said, it's tactile. You're interacting directly with the device. You are taking this window that's full of an application and sliding it up and up. And once you slide it up, you realize that underneath that screen were the application icons of running apps.
I can never remember. I know it, but I can never remember to do it. I always
and that's absolutely right. I mean, it's not something that occurs to you. So that's why I make a note of the difference between there's something that makes things easy to use 30 seconds after you try it, and then there's the thing where you're not going to get it for a while, but once you get it, it'll make things easier forever.
I mean, the analogy usually is that abstract gestures are more like keyboard shortcuts. They're there for power users who can go through the mental gymnastics of remembering them. But the direct manipulations are easier. Like pinch to zoom, most people took to that almost immediately, or just scrolling a list or moving a panel. The thing where it becomes problematic is when they lack consistency. And even, for example, what Apple has shown off of iOS 7, in the Mail app and the Messages app, you can slide the panel over to peek at or to change navigation views and see your lists. But if you go the other way, it's a way to delete individual messages, where in Safari you can go backwards and forwards in history by sliding, and in other apps that gesture doesn't exist at all. And if you can't always depend on it being there, you start to not remember it, or you have to stop and think, I'm in an app that supports it, and then it becomes more overhead.
Absolutely. To this day, I use the Comixology Comics Reader app several times a week, and that's been for a couple of years now. And still, when I finish reading a comic, my natural inclination is I'll just zoom it. I'll just zoom it off to minimize it by zooming it all the way in with a multi-finger gesture, expecting it will take me back to my comics collection, and it just never works that way. That's not necessarily Comixology's fault, but it does show you that once your brain gets wired up to think that this is how I completely dismiss what I'm looking at and go back to where I was before, the brain simply expects to see that more and more. Again, going from what I've read online about iOS 7, there's the same thing going on with its new back feature, where you swipe from one side to the other, and that will take you back one step to where you were in a hierarchy. So perhaps partly because I'm so used to Android that there is a universal back button, I'm thinking, I want to step back to where I was. That'll always work. And, no, I've just scrolled this thing sideways one way. Okay, well, how about this one? Nope, that does nothing at all. Is it because I didn't do it properly? No, it's because it just simply doesn't work that way at all. So, yeah, I mean, you can't just have a good idea for one app. It has to be a good idea that can be applied everywhere, and that's the challenge.
What about Leap Motion? Do you think that they're going to... We're still waiting. I guess the hardware is delayed, but we're still waiting. This is the little box you put in front of your iMac, and then you can do gestures on your iMac. And everybody, it's funny, every time we mention this, people go, Leap Motion, Leap Motion. Do you think that's going to be widely accepted, or is it another one of those geek things?
Nah.
Yeah,
It's especially because it's a special box you have to buy that there's no use case for it yet.
Right. Also,
it's not even just the problem of people being aware that it exists just as a consumer item is a huge problem. So now let's say you have figured it out. You have found out it exists. Yes, you do think it's worth the money, and yes, you do get one installed. Now you're facing the problem of all the developers trying to support it. And so it has to be
Microsoft or Apple to make it.
So it's only when you put it on something like the Xbox One, when you say, no, every single product we make has this built in. And I think you do also have to give people the option, usually through settings, of turning it off if they're scared of it, but only when every developer knows that every box has this, where all those really brilliant ideas are going to come to surface.
Right.
I mean, to Andy's point also, a lot of the stuff has to be worked into the operating system in order for it to be consistent enough to use. And we saw that with the iPad gestures. You started playing Fruit Ninja, and all of a sudden you were swiping into your Mail app because Apple had co-opted what you used to do with Fruit Ninja.
Did that happen?
I just sliced a photo from my nan.
Absolutely. And now with the new hierarchical backwards gesture, people are complaining it interferes with, or they're wondering what's going to happen with all the apps that use hamburger buttons and basements, because Facebook has those on both sides of their apps now, and those don't look like they're going to be compatible with what Apple showed off at WWDC.
Just for those of us who have no freaking clue what you were talking about, hamburger buttons,
sidebars.
Those are those 4 lines that you swipe over.
Yeah, and Apple's
and what's
not
a
big fan of
basement?
those. A basement is, so these are, Mark Kawano, who used to be Apple's developer evangelist, user interface evangelist, coined that term. It's when you have a sidebar that you throw everything into with no organization because you have no other idea where to put it. And Facebook kind of started this because in Facebook you would swipe sideways and you'd have this long list of every feature in Facebook, and then you'd tap it and you'd go back to the main screen. And they had that hamburger button on the top, which is that 3-line button. And Apple's replacing those with backwards chevrons because they want it to look more like a back button. But that is going to be a universal thing. And what do apps like Facebook and
Google does
Vesper
that now,
and
right?
all the Google apps do those.
I do think that's
Or
a great
Android, I
idea.
should say. Yeah.
I mean, one of the few really bad ideas from even the first iOS was, okay, let's go into the settings for this app. Where are those? Oh, you have to leave the app and go into the master settings to find it.
That was really bad. Yeah.
Every time on an Android or an iOS app, I find that if you swipe to the left often enough or touch this hamburger button, you will find, well, here's basically the master menu that will not only give you it's brilliant because not only does it give you those settings and those master options, but just like in Windows Phone, it will keep a sliver of that screen you just left way off on the right, so that you still are have your orienteering on here where I am and what I'm doing.
Was it Facebook that invented that? Who? Because
Lauren Brichter started it with the Tweety for iPad.
Tweety, okay.
Facebook made an adaptation of it.
Yeah.
And Leo, another example, the Hue app for iPhone, which I use a ton. Now you swipe up to get to the panel as you control all your lights, but now that's going to be Control Center. So am I going to swipe up and get both that panel and Control Center? I have to swipe Control Center down again.
Right.
I have no idea what's going to happen.
I have that problem sometimes on Android where a down swipe doesn't do what I think it's going to do. It brings down the notifications. So I can see that.
And it's multiple problems. I mean, like I said, I like the fact that Android has a universal back button, so much so that when I get lost in an iOS app now, I just sort of involuntarily touch the lower right corner of the glass of my iPad to get back to where I was.
People. Okay, I just want to point out, people have excoriated Android for the back button for years, but I always felt like that was something missing. And once you get used to it, you want to hit the back button. Just want to point that out.
The palm back gesture was nice too.
Exactly, and but even so, as much as I like it, there are times when it doesn't do exactly what I think it will do.
More and more it does, though, right?
But
it's more consistent.
It works. It was a huge problem in 2.0. Now with 4, there are a lot of things that they solved in 4.0, chiefly just by essentially bringing all the Android developers into a room, closing and locking the doors,
spanking them,
turning up the lights, showing everybody, okay, you realize that there are 50-gallon drums full of oily rags, and I'm holding a lit torch. Will you do what we tell you to do with user interface, or will we not? And realize that I'm in a glass-lined vault with a trap door to safety, and you are not.
Hey,
it's a scene from Avengers, right?
Yes.
Cage.
Thank you for that. And basements, those are something I swipe up?
That's the sidebar. The basement is another name for the sidebar.
Oh, so that thing you go to the side is named into something you go down to.
The hamburger button opens the basement.
The hamburger button opens the basement.
Yes.
You know, I played that game on Atari 2600 after school every single day. And then you can't get the key because ET has to hit exactly the right divot to find it. Oh, man.
It sounds like a spy test. You know, the moon, wolf howls at the moon. The hamburger button opens the basement.
It's a cold day for
It's designer jargon, but these things do propagate.
No,
like you said,
and I'm glad they do, and I'm glad you
explained
explained them, because now, I mean, I can call, I've always, I said that thing, the lines that you swipe over, hamburger button.
Yeah.
It's a relatively descriptive
And they're
name.
probably going to be replaced by the backwards chevron when iOS 7 comes out.
In iOS.
Yeah. We'll see what happens elsewhere.
You know, when you talk about always-on cameras, it looks as if, especially from what Google said at Google I/O, Google's moving to always-on microphones, right?
Moto X, Moto 10, whatever it's called.
And
Moto
the
X.
rumor on Moto X is that's going to be listening all the time, but certainly in the search thing eventually. I think that Chrome search is going to be waiting for you to say, okay, Google. So how do you? I don't know if people mind that so much, or is there going to be a big backlash?
I had this experience where I was.
I kind of like it.
I was DMing somebody, and they started sending back these really, really strange things, and I didn't know what it was. And then I wrote back saying, "What's happening?" And they said, "Oh, Google Glass was in my purse, and it's been sending you my conversation." And that's a generation 1 problem, but it does show you that when things are always listening, software is never bug free, and when things are always listening, it just opens you up to those exact reasons why Andy is taping over his cameras.
God, I only wish I could say something.
I don't know. This is off topic, but I don't. From after 3 weeks with using Glass, I don't know how you could be sending a conversation by accidentally tapping something in your purse with Glass.
Yeah. They were having a conversation while walking down the street, and it was being DM'd to me.
The microphone comes on, it would have to be an unusual confluence of a tap, the right command.
So it was a fairly tech-savvy person.
You'd have to accidentally tap in the first.
Accidentally start a hangout with you.
Yeah, or something strange. Yeah. I think that as you said, that's version 1. I think it'll be solved.
Yeah.
Hey,
again, but it really is again education. I mean, I had a lot of really pleasant interactions with Glass in Philadelphia on Saturday. One of them, a gentleman, while his wife was totally mortified, like 10 steps away, asked me, "Have you ever been shot at for violating people's privacy with those?" And I had to say, "No, I have never been shot at for violating people's privacy." Expecting him to say, "Well, you're about to be shot."
You're about to be. Has anybody ever punched you in the nose?
I'm living the title song from Fresh Prince of L.A. Of Bel Air. My mom's gonna get scared. I'm gonna get shot, and I have to go back to Boston because I'm on a regularly scheduled Amtrak train later that day. But still. But yeah, but as soon as you say that, no, this is how it works. No, it doesn't just automatically capture everything. I think that people have to get from it. Science fiction usually gets ahead of science fact, and that's why people are afraid to be exposed to a micron of a tiny amount of radiation, because they think that, well, radiation gives you cancer. Yeah, but not quite so much if it's like from 50 yards away and you're under the sun and getting much more radiation from the sun.
Leo, you have the same conversations with Ford and people that I do. And at CES every year they'd said, we can make a car that can do almost anything, but it would scare the hell out of the general population. So we are forced to do what, like now this car shows you rear view driving. This car will park for you. You have to one thing at a time to acclimatize us so we don't freak out and think robots are taking over the earth.
For some reason, Google Now is another example of things that initially I thought people would find very creepy, because Google uses what it knows about you to put up those cards. And yet it's so hideously useful, I don't hear people complaining so much about it. And I'm just wondering if always-on microphones, always-on cameras will, in the long run, be so useful. Remember, we all wanted HAL 9000. Well, Hal's camera was always on, and his microphone was always on. He could read lips too, but that was another story.
Well, just don't.
Jarvis and Iron Man.
Yeah, right.
Just don't give your phone access to the airlock, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
But yeah,
Dave.
people. It's when you talk about people of a raw hardware feature, that scares people. When you tell people that essentially all of your travel information, as soon as you land in your city, will be organized and ready for you and anticipate your every need, that's when Google Now, when Google Now is simply a product demo, it's scary. The first time you take out your phone and you see that, every piece of information that I was gonna get is right here, along with all the other pieces of information I was gonna look for after that. All right then.
Exactly.
And it's illusory. For a long time, navigation companies would say that we can't leave the mic on all the time because it would drain your battery too fast and you'd have a bad experience and blame us. And now we're solving, it wasn't a privacy issue, it was a battery issue. And now we're solving that. And we're giving, it starts to get creepy. There's a disconnect between what we see and what we understand. There was a big story this week about Nordstrom using the Wi-Fi radios in our devices to track our movements through stores so they could optimize store flow and figure out what products we went to and where we spent the most time. And this upset people when they notified them because they didn't like the idea of being quote-unquote spied on by video cameras and Wi-Fi receivers. Meanwhile, every time you have a loyalty card or an email address or a phone number and you give it to them, that unique identifier is enough for them to track everything you ever buy anywhere. It's just we never thought about it. Yeah. So the reality of the fear is different than the fantasy of the fear.
But part of it is control and transaction. if I'm giving, I have the choice of giving you a loyalty card or not giving you a loyalty card. There's some businesses that keep asking me, "Oh, would you like a loyalty card?" And I say, "No, I really don't want to give you my zip code, my personal information." And so I have that level of control. The second thing is that the reason why I use a loyalty card at my local market is that I get really, really fantastic discounts without having to clip coupons individually. So yes, I realize I'm giving up some personal information, but I'm getting something tangible in return. When I'm in the middle of a store and they're collecting information about this is the identity of this consumer. Here's how long he spent at this kiosk. Oh, then he spent some time over here. He walked right past this, and so I feel as though they're taking something and I'm losing some privacy. I'm not getting anything in return for it. So you have to really sell to people that this is not something we're simply taking from you. We're giving you a barter relationship where we get something from you, but we give you something in return. That's really what Google is basing a lot of their business on. That if they were like Facebook, where we will give you a very mediocre social network, but we will absolutely hammer with a chisel, a cold chisel, and explosives every piece of data we can possibly get out of you, with or without your approval, and give you pretty much nothing in return. That's a bad relationship. Google is saying we will take lots of information from you. We will make lots of money off of that information, but we will give you a lot of free services that would pay you'd have to pay a lot of money for otherwise. We're going to take a break. I just want to. I've completed the 2 gigabyte download of Essential Sounds and Instruments for Logic Pro, and now it offers me an optional stuff: bass drum kits, multi-output drum kits, producer patches, drum machine, guitar, mallet, orchestral loops, piano, world sound loops. These are the Apple loops you used to buy in individual DVDs. Yep. Reverbs, a total of 35 gigabytes worth of additional stuff. Good luck, MacBook Air users. Well, I'm going to install it. What the hell? But I got to say, at that point, you know what? $199 doesn't sound so bad. The Apple Loops alone cost me more than that when I bought them on individual discs.
Wait, there's more.
But really, it's going to take me forever to download all this stuff.
Get a second tube of Mighty Putty. Just place a nominal shopping charge.
It's nice, and it's optional. You don't have to download it. But if you want all of the loops, all of the sounds and everything, here's the new UI from at the chooser of the projects. I could choose a new project: hip hop, electronics, songwriter, multi-track, and it shows me which of the loops I would be using in this that it's still downloading, as you can see, and then an empty project. I have to say, if in many ways I think this feels like it's GarageBand but plus, and you know, look at this. Use musical grid, the tempo, key signature, C major, minor, time signature, audio input, audio output. This is great. I have to say, this is impressive. It seems as if for $199, you're getting essentially a music studio in your laptop. That's pretty impressive. We'll see. I just sent a text to my son saying, "Download the new Logic. You have my permission." Our show today brought to you by our good friends at Audible.com. Audiobooks galore. It's the best bookstore of audiobooks ever, anywhere. Over 100,000 titles. Pretty much everything is now out on Audible. I'm a huge fan of Audible.com, as you know, as is Andy. They have something new, the top 5 lists from audiobook listeners, from Audible listeners. So this is kind of a cool idea, and they're just people. Although this says Geordie's list, I wonder if it's not that Geordie. No, it's some other Geordie. But that's kind of a neat idea, you know. And I hope that they get some famous people in here too, because that's really cool. These are like the music lists that you see on Spotify and so forth. Audible is fantastic. Here's my Audible history. And it says, listeners with similar histories also bought. This is just the fun of Audible is browsing this incredible bookstore. Fiction, nonfiction, biography. They've got, you know, if you heard about J.K. Rowling, you know, she wrote a mystery novel as a guy, Robert Galbraith. Well, we know now it was her because of her tweets. The Cuckoo's Calling has been on Audible since May. It came out on Audible before we knew it was J.K. Rowling. So the author of Harry Potter has a new mystery. I haven't read it. I don't know if it's good or not. But you can get it on Audible. The thing about Audible is when you listen to these, they come alive. They get the greatest actors. many of them, Broadway and Hollywood stars reading. It's a real art to read a book and bring it alive, and they found the people who can do it. And I tell you, I listen to Audible every moment I get. Andy, what are you listening to these days?
As a matter of fact, The Cuckoo's Calling.
Really?
That story broke in the Sunday London Times on Sunday, and so I was reading about it like Sunday afternoon. Again, just as you say, discover that it's actually an audiobook. Great! I'm looking for a new book. I bought it, and it was in chapter 6, and it's like, wow, it really is a very, very strong book.
Great.
And you have to if J.K. Rowling does not require fruit baskets or anything from anybody, but you have to imagine that every person who reviewed this book, when absolutely nobody knew that Robert Galbraith was actually J.K. Rowling, who gave it a glowing review and said, "This is just a masterful debut novel. I'm really excited about this. About this undiscovered talent who clearly has a gift for storytelling."
He's surprisingly good for a first novel.
Going places.
Because a lot of these reviews are just like, I can't believe this is this person's first book. It's exceptionally, it's a great mystery. It's well told. It's gripping. It's compelling. And now that all those reviewers who said that can now say, I didn't even know that it was J.K. Rowling. Even when you just give me, I don't have no idea what the identity is. That proves that I review the book and not the author. But yeah, 50. But it is a little bit disappointing because I think that same piece said that only about 1,500 copies had been sold.
Wow.
And then like the next day after the story broke, sales increased on Amazon by 150,000%.
Yeah, not surprised.
But you shouldn't care about that. What I love about it is such a richly textured. It's a very, very straightforward detective novel about a sort of a Paris Hilton sort of like socialite celebrity. Jumps off of the roof of a building. It's deemed a suicide. The wealthy, the adopted brother of that person hires this scruffy, down on his luck, former special forces detective with a rundown office and a brand new, inexperienced, just hired today receptionist to look into it. And it really is one of those. I think I'll just keep listening to this until I get to the end of this chapter stuff. So
good.
You really do see that with the gift of hindsight, that this is somebody who is very experienced at laying out a story because every detail is just so nicely painted.
It's kind of cool because she never has to work a day in her life. I mean, she's the richest woman in England now, more than the Queen, and yet, so what this is, and she writes under her pen name. So this is an example of somebody who writes for the love of it, pure love of it. Yeah. And I'd love to hear what that sounds like.
It's the reader is very good too because. What I love about people who read my favorite audiobook narrators are the ones who will act a little, just enough so that you can easily discern different voices in a conversation, but they don't try to oversell it. So the detective, he talks a little bit rougher like this, but he doesn't go full Jason Statham or nothing. Right. But you know that when there's a conversation between the posh one and the rough detective, you know who's who, and it just makes it flow that much better. He doesn't do this voice when the new female assistant is talking. Yeah.
Let's play. It's Robert Glenister does the narration.
Strike absorbed the impact, heard the high-pitched scream, and reacted instinctively. Throwing out a long arm, he seized a fistful of cloth and flesh. A second shriek of pain echoed around the stone walls, and then...
It's dramatic. That's good. I want to hear it now. That's great. So you want to get this free? You can. It's called The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, a.k.a. J.K. Rowling. And it's right there on the front page of audible.com. So here's what you do. Go to audible.com/MacBreak. You'll sign up for the gold account. That's a book a month. But your first month's free. That means your first book is free. Your first credit is free. Pick a book, download it, listen to it. If after 30 days you say, yeah, it's not for me, no problem. Cancel. You pay nothing. That book is yours to keep no matter what. I don't think you're going to say that. I think anybody who listens to podcasts is probably a good candidate for audible.com. I am like hooked, and I have been for more than 13 years now. Audible.com/MacBreak. Give it a try. And The Cuckoo's Calling might be a good one to start with. Yeah, if you like mysteries. It sounds like kind of a noir, almost a noir detective novel.
Not really. It's a modern story. There's not a lot of the dame came at me in sections like an encyclopedia. It really is. Let's find out. It starts way earlier than it needs to. About here's how this woman came to be this person's secretary the day that she had before that. Here is the pressures that are influencing Cormoran's strike. Now that I will admit this threw me when I was reading the description before I bought it. That Cormoran's strike.
What a name!
That's not as bad as Remington's Steel, but it's
close.
It's a very detective-y sort of name, but it's a very, very modern tale. I mean, the whole again with hindsight, you can tell that this is written by somebody who has a great deal of experience with the British press, because the entire first chapter is about the press. The scene of the suicide and the press is, how the press is hanging around and smoking cigarettes and waiting for something to happen. And you can see this thinly veiled, just tiny little orange seed of contempt mixed inside that stuff.
I like it. By the way, so the chat room saying, thank God they don't have Gilbert Gottfried narrating any of these, but actually they do. He narrates his own book.
Oh, God.
I'm not going to read the title.
How about like a stage reading of love letters with Gilbert Gottfried and Fran Drescher?
I'm going to play. Here's what Gilbert Gottfried sounds like.
Movie terms. I was once at a party and overheard these Hollywood types discussing Tom Cruise.
I would listen to that in the car. I would listen to that. Anyway.
Depends on the story.
Now, if you're in California, so I bet that's a way to get points off your license, like you've been speeding.
Gilbert Gottfried.
Sir, do you know why I pulled you over?
What do you do when you come to a red light? Do you slow down? Do you stop?
Now, I'm presuming that...
I'll just take the points on my license.
I'm presuming that is not... his normal voice, but maybe it is. I don't know. Here, there's a on YouTube. You can there's a video of him reading 50 Shades of Grey. Now Fran Drescher reading that. Now that would be hot.
Leo Laporte, you definitely have a type.
Here,
50 Shades of Grey. The erotic best-selling novel read by Gilbert Gottfried.
My inner God.
Okay, we'll stop right there. You get the idea.
Biggest romantic book ever.
Thank you, Audible, for giving us a good reason to laugh. Moving on. Apple is warning. Lowered expectations for Q3 2013. In fact, all of the analysts are also talking about lowered expectations. We will see. When do they announce their July 24th?
Yeah.
So in about 6 days, before our next episode. A number of analysts are kind of downgrading what they think Apple will report. Apple's traditionally sandbagged the analysts, always saying, oh, no, it's going to be a bad quarter, and then coming out better than anybody expected because, of course, the stock prices.
Recently.
They've been more honest?
Yeah. The last few, they changed the whole way they report. They do their expectation. I forget what it's called when you set expectations for the next quarter.
Yeah.
But they've been making those much closer to what actual expectations will be.
The analyst consensus is that Apple will have exactly the same result as this quarter last year. In other words, 0 revenue growth year over year, which would be, I don't know, would that be a reason to freak out? I don't know. Doesn't mean they don't make money.
World. Because the Apple released all their products last fall. They've had no events until WWDC this year. They're probably going to wait until this fall to announce all their next products. And usually they would have iPad event in the spring, and that would boost sales over the following quarter. And they've kind of gone, at least for the last 2 years, to these ginormous events in one part of the year, and that probably costs them some growth in the other parts of the year.
Yeah. This is actually the first year that they have not introduced a new iPad during the spring.
Right.
So this is definitely new territory for them in terms of reactions.
So they gave a revenue guidance, but they did not give out an earnings guidance. They've only done that once before. And so analysts are also a little worried about that. They're getting guidance as to what the overall revenues will be, but not of how much Apple would make. As you probably remember, the earnings, margin has been shrinking for Apple products as well. Another cause for concern. Anyway, we'll know next week, and we'll talk about it the next MacBreak Weekly. Let's see what else. Oh, did you see this? This is Instagram added video, right? Now we realize the reason they added video was so that they could put ads in the Instagram stream. Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Facebook. But one of the ads is a 15-second tease for Jobs, the film. Which one is this? Is this the Aaron Sorkin Jobs? Or is this...
No.
This is the god-awful Ashton Kutcher Jobs.
The god-awful Ashton. It's why they went 15 seconds, too, right, Leo? Because 6 seconds is not a trailer make.
Yes, right. Vine is 6 seconds. Vine is not going to have this revenue opportunity. Let's watch. Yeah, anyone could take 15 seconds of this crap. I mean, let's see.
Here's to the crazy ones.
It is Kutcher.
The misfits. The rebels. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
That's chutzpah to use that copy.
Yeah. Don't tell so.
And
okay, it's again. Ashton Kutcher. He has a right to work. A lot of camera operators and lighting people and sound guy got jobs.
Got jobs. Yeah,
that's fine.
Maybe that's
In
what
this
the
economy?
jobs in this movie title means. Jobs for the movie industry, not Steve Jobs. Let's.
Here's to the crazy ones.
What did we do to you, Leo?
Teasing this movie forever.
Because the people who
Yeah, because it showed at Sundance and then they didn't release it. Which
They were at Macworld, not this year, but last year they were showing parts of it. So
Yeah.
it's terminable.
Well, what it means is it's really bad, and they had to fix it. Anyway, August 16th, or watch for it on an Instagram feed near you.
Watch the whole thing in 15-second clips, like the.
I think we just saw the best part right there. Apple. Now this is interesting. I don't know if this is true or not. Jessica Lesson reporting, and by the way, this is her. Jessica was at Wall Street Journal. And she is starting a new enterprise, and temporarily on her blog, she's breaking stories, which you got to say, pretty good. She says that Apple is trying to launch a television service that allows viewers to skip commercials, but pays the company for the skipped views. This would be an interesting secret sauce that might make Apple a little more welcome in those big content company boardrooms. Apple told media executives it wants to offer a premium version of the service that would allow users to skip ads and would compensate television networks. Now, I'm not sure if that means you'll get a button to skip or if it'll be an ad-free service. That's not clear.
But that's not the point of advertising. They don't care that you get paid, that they'll get paid for an ad that wasn't seen. They want people to see CGI lemons floating out of the toilet bowl and you to think that, wow, I want lemons floating out of my toilet bowl as well. What is that product again? So
they're paying the media companies, not the advertising companies.
Right. And so it's interesting.
It's interesting, and might be why it's been going fairly slowly for Apple in making this deal. We've been hearing about this for more than a year.
I mean, it would be interesting if the people who are invested in that were the people who are responsible for ad buys, that they would get some. It's not as though it's a blanket. It would be interesting if it were not a blanket service where you just simply get a version of the service without commercials. But if you pay an extra, let's say $3 or $4 a month, you have the ability to push a button and skip a commercial because. If you're not in the business of selling furniture polish, but you're in the business of selling ads, the knowledge that, that person, here's an ad that absolutely nobody is sitting through to watch. That could be interesting and valuable information. So maybe they'd go on that basis.
I should point out that Lesson was at Sun Valley at the very prestigious billionaire conference in Sun Valley. But every content executive, all Rupert Murdoch on down is there. So it's not unlikely that she got the scoop from somebody there.
She had good Apple sources at the Wall Street Journal too. I mean, she basically took over from Kane when she took sabbatical.
She's good. Yeah. So I wouldn't throw this out. I think that's probably the case. The question is whether Apple can convince the content companies to go along with this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like much has changed. I mean, Steve Jobs did that famous speech at All Things Digital years ago where he said that the go-to-market strategy for any of this stuff is incredibly difficult, much more so than a phone, because instead of several, national cell phone companies, you have all these small regional cable monopolies, and some of them like Comcast own studios or competitors like Sony own studios, and making those deals isn't something that Apple's traditionally been good at. It's a piecemeal sort of approach. It's not a universal solution, and none of this stuff sounds like it changes that base equation. And maybe, Tim Cook is more pragmatic than Steve Jobs is, and he's willing to make more compromises or take a different path than Steve Jobs would have taken, but it still doesn't sound like an Apple-like
I gotta
product.
say though, it's something consumers want. I'm pay for HBO so I don't see ads. I love Netflix. In fact, some of these Netflix originals now the new one, Orange is the New Black, is great, from the guy who created Weeds. I loved House of Cards. That was better than great. And it's ad free. They're ad free. You're paying content creators directly to produce this stuff and getting it out of subscription fees. I think that's a fine model. The problem is going to NBC, which has sold ads onto these shows and saying, look at Hulu. They were not able to do ad-free versions even in the paid version of Hulu.
It's intercepting it at the box level instead of the company level, and it sounds trickier to pull off.
Well, but I think that's why, frankly, in the long run, commercial television is doomed.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I really like about Xbox One's strategy, which is to say we believe it's the whole idea is that we will allow somebody else to get into the mess of broadcast television and even basic cable television. We will simply give you a pass-through and an overlay that lets you use that stuff a lot more conveniently. Meanwhile, a lot of the people who are using our box for games are going to be more interested in HBO Go, going to be more interested in the individual apps that some of the cable companies are putting out, rather than simply sitting through a program guide and watching TV in the traditional way. If there's a solution to the problem of getting all these different networks and all these different companies together to produce a digital television service that works for people, I have no clue what it is, and I'm not even confident that any company, even Apple, can cut that Gordian knot.
What is the future?
To wait for an station level event, Leo.
I mean, we're ad-supported content, so I shouldn't be dissing it, but broadcast television has gotten worse and worse.
You're far more agile than any traditional media company, and it sounds like the people at the top are just, they look at the music industry as a cautionary tale and not as a digital conversion success story.
Right.
And it sounds like nothing less than an extinction level event at the top executives at those companies will let the new generation of people come in and make the kinds of deals and move into the digital era where their content is inevitably going anyway.
Asteroid's on its way, guys.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that you can advertise very effectively because you know exactly who your audience is for show to show to show. So when you're not going to take an ad that you think is going to honk off your listeners, much the same. But to compare and contrast to cable TV, where there are entire channels that I just won't watch anymore because the commercials are just so offensive to me.
Try to watch a movie on a ad-supported network. It's impossible because we've seen it without the ads, and it's just chopped to hell. And we're spoiled now. It was fine when that was your only choice. Monday night at the movies, I remember before VCRs, that was the way you watched movies. But we got choices now, and it's just not going to fly anymore.
And there was no regard for the movie either. They would put the commercial in when the time index told them to, and not when the story flowed.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah,
even if they did have regard, it still didn't work. Put some ads in The Sopranos. See how good that is.
And to Andy's point too, even the Xbox One, I plug a HDMI pass-through in Canada, it's not going to do anything. It took a year to get the iPhone here. I can't even imagine how long it's going to do to get studio deals and things internationally.
Right. Well, we'll see. I talked to somebody over the weekend. I won't say what company. He worked for a very large American company, on the order of Ford or something, but not a car company at all. And he said it was very interesting that in the measurement of their response on their broadcast ads, typically about 1% response rate, they were getting response rates on their social media plays of 500% more, 5 times better response on their social media plays. And of course, it probably was less expensive than buying an ad on NBC. So I think that companies are starting to, first of all, they're getting the metrics. They're starting to pay attention. They're noticing this as they dip their toe into this new media and different ways of advertising and different ways of let's not even say advertising, different ways of reaching their customers and talking to their customers, and more appropriate ways of talking to their customers, and they realize it's so much more effective, that I think that's going to happen. I think we're moving in that direction. And I would hate to be a broadcast executive today. That's why they should be listening to Apple.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, the sale of Hulu is off. 21st Century Fox, Murdoch, Disney, and NBC Universal, who all jointly and kind of inharmoniously own Hulu, have decided not to sell it. Apparently, the bids that they were getting were not anywhere near what they wanted. So they've decided to put more money into Hulu, which is interesting, $750 million into it. And I hope they can resolve their issues because, what we'd heard is part of the problem was that one partner wanted ad-free paid versions. One partner said, no, you got to have ads. You can guess which was which. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Disney, NBC Universal, and 21st Century Fox. Comcast is a silent partner because they couldn't buy NBC Universal and maintain their managing role. I don't know. What's the future of Hulu even? I like Hulu. I wish that the Hulu Plus didn't have ads in it. Feels like I'm paying and then paying again.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of ads, but
it's enough that it annoys you that you're paying for them and still having them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, iTunes has everything. I can go to iTunes and get music, and I can get movies, and I can get TV shows. I can't do that for comic books. I have to go to a separate Marvel or DC app, or Comixology can do it. But I can go to Hulu for television, but there's no grand unified place where this stuff just lives. And maybe that's the future model where channels become apps and they exist in
I truly believe that
internet space.
The reason Hulu was founded is because they saw this kind of new idea of content that's paid, and but they just couldn't get the partners to go along with it, and that's the problem. And I think you're right. I think it's going to, what did you call it, an extinction event?
Yeah,
extinction level event.
It's gonna take that because these guys are just not going to go for it.
There's a phrase I use all the time for years, which is it's a great idea, but a lot of people are going to have to die first. I mean, it's not that we should kill people who oppose our plan to have free internet television, but only because there are people you need people who have grown up with a broad menu of internet entertainment choices to just naturally and natively understand that our network's programming has to be available and streaming through the web just as readily as it streams through any other result. When you have people who are even 5 to 10 years removed from that, they're always going to think that our business is cable, our business is cable television, and anything that could possibly ruin our revenue stream from there is just a non-starter.
Right.
It's for the same reason that that's why I think that wearable computing that is going to be cracked by someone who grew up with phones, with smartphones. It's not going to be done by anybody over the age of 25 at this point. I think only because you're not going to understand. You don't have that native understanding of it unless you really grew up with this always connected device in your pocket. It's fortunately it's an age thing. I'm an old person. I'm stuck in my ways. I whittle small ducks and sell them for pennies.
You're an old person. I'm the one talking about Monday night at the movies.
When you deal with immigrant versus native, there's some people who can move to a new country and immediately become fluent in the language and end up living almost like a native existence. And there's some people who even after 50 years can't speak a word of whatever the local language is and exist the same way they did the day they moved there. And it's the same thing digitally. You have digital immigrants who never took to it or looked to it as a threat, who fear it, and because it does change. They're change adverse. It does change the fundamental nature of their business. And even modern companies, we've seen Microsoft be incredibly afraid of hurting Windows revenue, even when it's destroyed a lot of opportunities for them, where Apple will go and make an iPod and then destroy that with an iPod Nano, then destroy that again with an iPhone, and then have an iPad next in line. And it seems like Netflix wasn't called mail you a DVD flicks. They had a clear vision of where the future was heading. And that kind of company just seems better suited to the digital future than a company that's worried about the copper wire and who has monopoly control over Podunk, Illinois' fiber feed.
It's kind of depressing. I'm watching Ray Donovan, which is an ad-free show on Showtime, except that it's clear Apple bought product placement because Donovan says, hey, where's my iPad? and at first I thought, oh, well, that was they were just trying to be authentic. And then you see these Apple computers everywhere. It's all Apple computers. Same thing. What was the show where everybody had Nokia phones?
Superman, the Superman movie.
Yeah.
And Iron Man had to have his Burger King hamburger.
Can you guys knock that off? Are we not paying you enough money already? It's just annoying.
But at the same time, isn't it sort of distracting when you're watching a sitcom and you see them drinking cans of Diet Cola?
Well, no, I agree. There should be brands. No, I think it's okay if there are brands there, and it's okay if they decide, well, if we can get $50,000 for basically putting a real product in someone's hand, and we're not forced to like have them drink like this. You're right. There's ways to do it. You're right.
Or like CBS has these Windows computers that don't exist in the real world. They can't have Dells. They have to have a Windows logo on the back of their computers.
It was House of Lies where unaccountably every management consultant, this is a great show, Don Cheadle's show, and again, ad-free, I think it was on Showtime, but every management consultant in this entire show is carrying a Nokia Windows phone. That pushes credulity to the limit.
That is true, but but see, this has been going on for years. I was reading about Capricorn, making the movie Capricorn 1, and about how Telly Savalas got signed on to that movie, and the director didn't really want him because I thought, well, he's Kojak from the TV show. We don't want Kojak, forgetting that he was already like a movie guy before he went into TV. But the producer, who the director acknowledged was a genius at like making this movie happen, said, well, let me put it this way: if we sign Telly Savalas to that role, his network will give us $500,000 for the production. It's like, all right then.
I don't know if you remember, but when the iPhone came out,
advertising.
When the iPhone came out, a lot of TV shows were using it upside down. Clearly, they just wanted to use an iPhone, and they had no idea what it actually was. But now you go again to CBS, Hawaii Five-0. They were using Windows phones for a whole season, but not just using them. Oh, let me show you how the contacts work on your new phone, and doing like a mini tutorial in the middle of the show, which was hugely distracting.
Yick. Just yick.
Or this season, look, I have a Surface, and the person runs out of the police car, puts the keyboard down, clips it on, starts up Windows, and then tries to track the bad guy, which just seems like such an inefficient idea.
He's gone. Apple Computer loses in court on the ebooks deal. All the other publishers tellingly settled before it went to court, but Apple decided to fight it, and in fact, they lost in court. They say, we did not fix ebook prices. We've done nothing wrong. We will appeal. And so this will go on and on and on. Apple? Go ahead.
They're saying they didn't fix prices. They're still heartlessly broken. There's still some books that they don't get 30% on.
There you go. I personally prefer the agency model. It just makes more sense to me, but whatever. Apple, this is a rumor, but an interesting rumor from Apple Insider, plans to buy a chip fab to build its own chips. Apple, as you know, buys its chips right now from Samsung. Actually, you might consider this rumor a little less incredible since it comes from a source called Semi-Accurate. I don't know if that's well, anyway.
I hope that stands for semiconductor. Yes.
Oh, I get it. Semiconductor.
It depends on whether there's 5 volts of voltage going through the rumor or not.
Right. You have to pay $1,000 a year to see Semi-Accurate's stuff. So nobody Apple Insider wanted to buy, nor do I, for that matter. But they say tags accompanying the story may reveal Apple's rumored mystery partner, United Microelectronics Corporation, UMC. That's a Taiwan-based chip maker. It's been around since 1980. Is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. It would be interesting, wouldn't it, if Apple... it makes perfect sense, really. They're designing their own, systems on a chip. Why shouldn't they make them? And Apple has more chip designers working for them. They're really there's thousands of guys working in this chip design area.
Yet another rumor says that they're re-upping with Samsung for 2015. So I mean, it's 6 and 10 and pick 'em.
For the A9 chip. Rumor about the next iPhone having a slow motion camera. I have a slow motion camera on my HTC One. I don't know if that's Do you like
it?
Yeah, it's cool. Do you like it?
Yeah, I like it quite a lot. It's one of those things where I just want to film Reservoir Dogs over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and remember now, YouTube, you can just upload a normal video and it's super slow motion. But it's kind of fun to have that built into the phone. You could do it in iMovie too, of course.
And that's less a rumor, and they went into the code for iOS 7 and found references to that. And that's similar. I mean, there was panorama code in iOS 4 or 5, and it didn't ship until iOS 6. So just because the code's in there doesn't mean we'll see it, but it does mean that it's something Apple's playing with.
It's the mogul feature. Yeah. It would be, according to the code, 120 frames per second, which would be 4 times normal. What's nice about that is if you played it back at 120 frames per second, you'd have very nice, crisp video. I have high frame rate video also on the HTC One, 60 frames. But it's nice. Motion looks much better. You don't get that kind of stutter. Look at the butterflies.
And Apple almost always has a camera feature. And I mean, to Andy's point about you imagining the keynotes, Phil Schiller almost always does a camera segment. And you can imagine him talking about the new optics in the iPhone 5S and whatever they've done to make the lenses bigger and the sensors better and that. And then talking about, and we've got this great new feature, 120, most rock solid, beautiful video you've ever seen. Look at it. It's just gorgeous.
But you know, when it's available in Android phone, and it has been for some time, how many people are going to get fooled by that and say, oh, wow, that's really great? Or how many people are just going to say, yeah, well, welcome to the club?
Yeah. Well, I think that Apple's secret sauce with photography, I think, is really all about the software they put into it. I was on Philadelphia on Saturday. For whatever reason, my real camera battery just did not recharge overnight. So I was going through both of my Android phone and my iPhone as a camera, and just doing another one of those day-through side-by-side tests. And every single time, there was just something much better about the way that the iPhone responded to that scene, where the blacks were punchier, the colors were a little bit truer, there's a little bit more sharpness there. And part of that is due to the sensor, and part of it's due to the lens, but a lot of it is just due to the firmware they put into it. How do they process that data coming off of that sensor? And so I'm convinced that they really do, even if they don't come up with something like the Lumia 1020, where you can take it apart and they will show you, here's how huge our sensor is. Look how amazing our image stabilization is, and wow, look how responsive this is, and blah, 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 and all the hardware. But if they then hook it up to an image processor that just muddies all the details, who cares? You can have a very much simpler, much smaller sensor like the iPhones and still have a much better piece of photography at the end of it.
And that's what the chipset you were talking about, Leo. They make their own chipset because that Swift processor has dedicated digital signal processors for cameras. And I mean, if you ask how people receive it, at WWDC, Apple invented the square photo and filters, and people weren't adverse to that.
Right.
That's a little bit embarrassing, I thought. It's like, don't
the Instagram.
Don't debase yourself. It's kind of like when you find out that like this absolute guitar god of rock from the 70s and 80s is now doing a reality show on TLC. It's like, oh, don't debase yourself by doing square pictures and crummy filters. Come on, you're better than that.
Every press release in my inbox was, we're adding filters to this app. And if this alone kills all of those press releases, I will be happy. I mean, spreadsheets were getting filters. It's embarrassing.
We're going to take a break.
Rose-colored glass.
When we come back, our picks of the week. Renee Ritchie's here from imore.com. Andy Anaka from the Chicago Sun-Times. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Our show today, as many of our shows, brought to you by squarespace.com. Simply the best place to create your next website, whether it's a blog, if you're an artist or a photographer, a portfolio. If you want to do e-commerce, they've got that now too. Squarespace is hosting plus software, and it's tightly coupled, so you get some real advantages. For instance, it is impossible. I've never seen a Squarespace site brought to its knees. Even when we send the entire Twit army out to bring a site down, it just doesn't happen. That's because they've got the best hosting with instant on-demand bandwidth. It's behind the scenes. You don't see it. But when your site gets hit, they've got the bandwidth. They turn it on, and it just automatically happens. They also have the best templates and designers who are working, award-winning design team who are working all the time to add new features. Beautiful templates like the new Momentum template, Full Bleed. If you're a photographer, you're going to love that. They also have a new calendar feature that bands will like, or stores, anybody with scheduled events. It's called the Events Collection. Everything is drag and drop. The page builder tool, they call it their layout engine, lets you customize pages in seconds by adding blocks of content like photos, videos, text, even things like social media content. plugins automatically. Immediately preview it as you go, so you don't need to do any coding. Now, if you are a CSS or JavaScript coder, they've got a fabulous developer platform, color-coded syntax and all of that. The style editor allows selection of fonts, colors, or layouts to customize templates. Each template starts, there's the Momentum template, at a great point, but then you customize it. In fact, as you browse around on Squarespace, you can see what people have done, and everything looks unique. Just scroll down. These are all Momentum-based sites. It's amazing. Squarespace.com, and now they've added their flexible and very powerful e-commerce solution. Unlimited sales, physical or digital goods, or both. They automatically will calculate tax and shipping. You can do coupon codes as you wish, anytime. All the sites, including the e-commerce sites, are mobile responsive, which is great. It means you automatically have a mobile site. You automatically have a mobile store. You can publish to and from social media with just a few clicks. Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Google+, LinkedIn, and more. All your website needs in a single powerful platform. Domains, design, development, commerce, hosting, and, of course, the best 24/7 support. Try it free. This is the confidence Squarespace has. Just go to squarespace.com. See that Get Started button? It lets you get the full run of the place. You can set up your site, even import content from other blog. They support all the APIs, including all the links, all the SEO, all the images, even all the comments. So you'll really see what your site's going to look like. You don't need a credit card. They won't ask you for money. It's 2 weeks, absolutely free. If you've got an event 2 weeks from now, you can just create a site and say thanks. Walk away. They don't mind. Oh, yeah, that's the Squarespace Note app, by the way. It's fabulous. This is they have the greatest app developers. They did the great Squarespace app for iPhone, iPad. Makes it easy to post, easy to check your stats. And I think that they said, hey, these guys are good. We should have them do something else. So they have the Squarespace Note app. Squarespace is so cool. These are just a wonderful company. I want you to try it out free for 2 weeks. No credit card needed, no offer code needed. But if you decide you want to buy, and by the way, the price is amazing. The full e-commerce, $24 a month. When you buy a year plan. Do get a year plan. You'll get the best discount from us. You'll also get the domain name free. They'll all hook it up for you. The discount? Well, just use the offer code MacBreak7 because we're in the 7th month, July, and you get 10% off on your new account. And if you buy a big plan like a yearly plan, that's a big savings. Squarespace.com. And use our offer code MacBreak7 to save. We really love them. Andy Anatko, your pick of the week, Thaw.
Mine is sort of a combined pick and tip. This is a very, very common item. This is a travel USB hub with the addition that it is a powered hub. So it's a really good thing to have for a couple of reasons. For the usual reason that, okay, you need extra ports. Also, if you're using devices that are BC 1.1 compliant, like the fast charging USB charging system, now you have 4 different ways, 4 different ports to charge a device from. Although realize that putting 4 on this is going to charge it very slowly, and that if you have a 10-watt charger, that's going to be a much better way to charge things. But the reason why it's a tip is that when I was traveling, I was hit the same problem, the one really frustrating problem I hit with the iPad, which is that you can buy what Apple calls a camera connection kit.
Oh, yeah.
A camera connection kit, which you plug this in and allows you to connect your camera or your SD card to this device and slurp in the photos. But the thing is, the iPad is very, very persnickety about the voltage requirements for this device you plug into it. All kinds of other like tablets and phones and other devices that I can hook USB stuff up to. These card readers and devices work just fine. With the iPad, it seemed even when I'm using the SD card reader, as often as not, it'll tell me, I'm sorry, this device, I can't use the device, derives too much power. And I'm saying, but it's an SD card reader that Apple made, and I put an SD, I'm sorry, I refuse to even tell you, apologize, I'm not going to use this. And so, it's even more frustrating when you have a device like a Google Glass or something, or a phone, where all it has to do, it has its own battery. It's not asking you to, oh man, it's going to try to charge. And so this is why, like, now this is part of my standard travel kit, because I travel with the iPad as my main computer. So if you have a powered hub then the powered hub will be delivering all the power that this camera or this card reader or this whatever needs for your iPad. And now you can finally slurp photos from your phone into your iPad or from your SD card into the iPad. Given that if you're traveling with your iPad as your sole computer, you really have no other options. It's important that photo import work. That's why this little thing, which will cost you all of $20, I happen to choose the pluggable because it's nice and small. I was in the hotel room looking for something to buy, good price, good reviews. I was familiar with the name, and so that's why I picked it. But even if you go to Office Max or Staples, you'll find others that are just like it. And the tip number 2 I will also offer is that if you're ever traveling and you discover that, oh, geez, I can't do this thing that's really important for me to do. If only I had this object or this item or this accessory, I could do that. Order it right there in the hotel room and have it waiting for you when you get home. Because if you just make a mental note to buy it sometime later on, you will be in a hotel room at some later date also thinking, oh, I can't import it to my iPad. Oh, if only I had a powered travel USB hub. And then again, you'll promise yourself to get it later on, and then you will never get it. Order it at the moment that you believe that you absolutely need this thing, and then you'll actually have this thing.
Very cool. I did actually order it just as you were talking. I ordered it.
It's pretty cool. Also, while you're at it, look online for tiny little drawstring bags, because you also want to make sure that all these things are together when you repack for your trip. So I also have a tiny little drawstring bag that has this and the AC adapter and the mini USB connector for it, so that they'll never get lost.
That's a good idea.
Be there in my kit.
Yeah, have this like the whole thing together. Yeah. From Pluggable, I guess that's the name.
Plugable. It feels like it needs an umlaut because Plugable. Plugable. It's a Spanish company. They make paella pans and powered travel USB hubs.
$20 on Amazon. It's a good deal. And as I said, I just ordered it. And I'm also going to order yours, I think. Renee Ritchie, the only guy on app.net, you and me.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time on it, though. I like it.
Gentleman's agreement.
It's almost like you and I have a private conversation going on.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's interesting because app.net is different from Twitter in that they, like Amazon, they kind of also but they kind of give away their infrastructure. They have the microblogging thing. It's absolutely cool. I mean, people got to know it because they migrated there when they were upset with Twitter's policies, and they did the microblogging. But app.net quickly rolled out their messaging API, which is more than direct messaging. It let apps like Whisper become full-fledged group chat apps. And they have a file storage API, and they've licensed a Places database so you can do location, and you kind of can roll your own apps based on all this infrastructure they provide. And that's what this app does. It's by Steve Strezza, who used to work most recently at Pocket, doing the Pocket app.
Oh, love Pocket.
Absolutely. And he's gone independent now. And his first, a little while ago, he did Project Amy, which let you do app.net messaging inside Apple's Messages app. And now this is called Oh Hi, and it's kind of a meme name, but what it is, yeah, absolutely. And if you know Steve, it's got exactly his personality. And what it does is it uses a Places system that app.net licensed so that you can do check-ins like you would at Foursquare, Facebook, or anything else. But he mated that with their file storage API to let you store photographs and comments. So it's not Foursquare in that it's not a social network per se. It's more like a personal journal. He wanted an easy way so that he could go someplace cool and take a photo, write some notes so that he himself would remember it, or he could use a share sheet to send it to Twitter or Facebook, but not broadcast it to everybody. And that's what this became. It's just a way to record the places that you go and the memories that you accumulate, almost like a journal. And the really interesting thing is because it's built on app.net, all your content is still app.net content. So any other app that can see your files, for example, can see the photos that you've stored or pull the text. And he's sharing it quite openly so that theoretically people could write apps that let you bring stuff in or take stuff out. People could write competitors or exact duplicates of his own app, which might sound problematic, but it means that if he doesn't have the time or capacity to do an Android or Windows Phone or BlackBerry version, somebody else could very easily assemble the same idea or a compatible app. And it sort of insulates you because we've gotten used to this age when apps get bought or they just get turned off and they go away, and all the content we've invested in them either disappears or we have to go through this really complicated, exhausting pulling it out and trying to find somewhere else for it. And because this is just using app.net, if this app goes away or he decides he loses interest in it, all that stuff is still available and someone else could roll many different ways for you to get it. So I liked the optimism and the generosity of the app, and I also liked the way the app itself functions.
Very cool. You have to have, of course, an app.net account.
Yes.
Now, they have free accounts now, because it used to be you had to pay $50 a year for AppNet, right?
They have limited free accounts, and you can either get invited or you can download the app.net Passport app, and that can get you a free account. That's a free app.
Oh, that's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, and the Passport app lets them do like universal sign-in. So like, when you want to authenticate something with Dropbox, if you have Dropbox installed, it's just a one-button click. And it's the same with the Passport app. Once you install it on your iPhone, anything else that wants access to app.net can just hook into that, and you just press the button, yes, I'll allow this access, and it saves you having to log in every time.
Very cool. Nice. All right. OHAI, OHAI.
Yeah.
So I recently went to the doctor, and he said, you have high blood pressure. And you got to keep track of this. And so fortunately, I have a blood pressure monitor that hooks up to my iPad and or iPhone from Things. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but it really is cool. $129.95. I can take the blood pressure readings. It unfortunately is a 30-pin connector, but if you have the adapter, which I do, it works just fine with the iPhone 5 or the newer iPads. Where it keeps track of your blood pressure, your history. And yes, you can tweet it, which I do, or you can also email it. And so my doctor said, what I want you to do is just to take your blood pressure a few times a day, different times a day during stressful events and so forth, and send me a record of it instead of having to write this all down and blah, blah, blah. Very good way to do it. They have another tracker to measure your heart rate. I've got the Things scale. They're really slowly adding to this, and they have a baby monitor as well. I don't know how that integrates, but it also works with the iPhone, which is pretty cool. WITHINGS.com. Not cheap. You can get a inexpensive blood pressure monitor for half the price at a drugstore, but it doesn't hook up to your iPhone, keep track of your history, and so forth. So if you're a geek like I am, you're going to get the more expensive but more cool blood pressure monitor. It is a cuff oscillometric monitor.
It's great. One of my writers reviewed it, and they ended up buying their own. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Very easy to use. One size fits all, which is unusual. And good to know that it does work with the adapter. So it's not like you have to have a old-fashioned 30-pin device. Hey, that's it for MacBreak Weekly for this week. I want to thank you, Renee Ritchie, for being here. imore.com, the place to go. Also, if you want to follow the conversation at Talk Mobile, if you go to talkmobile2013.com, every week, new stuff up there.
Yeah, this is Mobile Platform Week. So this is the big one, Leo. This is when we talk about different hardware vendors, different operating systems, ecosystems, services. You're going to be contributing, I think, Thursday or Friday, talking about where you see the future of mobile going. We had Sasha Sagan this week, Dieter Bohn, Christina Warren. We had the senior vice president of BlackBerry OS and QNX on. I think he's on today, actually.
Cool.
Really good discussion going on.
Very good. TalkMobile2013.com. Andy Anakos from the Chicago Sun-Times joins us every week on MacBreak Weekly. We couldn't do it without him. He also hosts a show called Anakos Almanac at 5x5.tv. Anything else you want to plug, Andrew?
Oh, God, a whole bunch of backlogged hardware reviews coming up in the next 2 weeks. So you'll be seeing lots of really crummy product photos that I do at great haste. Have my third Chromebook just arrived in the office today, so because I felt as though there was a gap when I feel as though when you're reviewing the $1,300 Chromebook, you also need to say, here's one that costs less than $300. So all that coming up on the Sun-Times side.
And I finally have got Logic Pro 10. I've downloaded all the loops. I have to say, and I agree with Jim Dalrymple of The Loop, who said that Apple's done virtually the impossible, which is add immense pro power to an application and yet make it pretty transparent and easy to use. I do like the new interface, and I have to say, I think that this is, for $199, okay, I'm going to take it back. This is great. This is a really sweet solution. And look, you get an 808 drum machine.
Message to all Twit staff. Rave in the break room, 7 p.m.
Leo's on the mic.
I'm on the mics. Andy Anako, Renee Ritchie, Leo Laporte, thank you for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays every week, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 UTC. We have a very nice audience in the studio. Thank you for being here. You can always come to our shows, we invite you. We have an open studio. All you have to do is email tickets@twit.tv. Is no charge, but that way we know to put a chair out for you. And if you're up Northern California way, we're about an hour north of San Francisco. We love having you in studio. Tickets@twit.tv. If you cannot be here live or in person, you can always get on-demand versions of the show, audio and video available after the fact at twit.tv/MBW for MacBreak Weekly. Show notes are there, such as they are as well. Thanks to Chad Johnson, who puts a great show together every week and finds stuff to talk about, even in the doldrums of July and August. Thank you, Chad. And thank you for being here. Now, get back to work, because break time is over.